There we go. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this evening. And yeah, I'm so happy that we've got such a great group of people. And to begin with, why don't we all kind of pop in the chat our name? If it's obviously will pop up anyway in terms of your user, but and maybe the waterway you're representing or a waterway that you love, and pop it in the chat just so we can kind of see where, yeah, what the representation is. Are you coastal? Are you inland? Yeah, it'd be nice just to check in and see where it is. And then you can also like link up as well and say hi to people who may be local to you as well. So this evening, we're going to spend an hour talking to you about bathing waters. So first of all, to introduce ourselves, my name's Kirsty Davis. I'm the Community Water Quality Manager at Surfers Against Sewage. So myself and Lizzie work on our Protecting Wild Waters programme. So we support communities to apply for bathing water status. We're also really, really glad to be joined by Becky Malby as well. Becky's going to contribute and talk about her experiences of bathing water status because Becky co-led with the community at Clean at Ilkley to apply for bathing status. And they were the first river in the UK to get bathing status. So like huge news. So we're really lucky to be joined by Becky. So can you see my screen okay? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, you can.
Great stuff. Lovely job. So, like I said, Lizzie and I lead our Protecting Wild Waters programme, and we're very lucky to be joined by Becky this evening as well, who's had a super busy week. So I'm sure at the end as well, Becky, it'd be great to hear about kind of the work you're doing at the end as well, about how people can get involved. It'd be brilliant. So, like I said, in the next hour, we're going to talk about why bathing waters are important, um, why we need more of them, especially at inland locations, why we're campaigning for more bathing waters as well, how communities are taking the lead and why they're doing that, and that's where Becky's input is really important. Um, find out how if your bathing water is applicable, your local river, beach, or lake is applicable to become a bathing water. We'll explain what that means and how to start an application as well. So we thought kind of to begin with, like, what is a bathing water? Like that language is kind of quite jargony, it's quite technical, it's used by the government as a way of like describing a kind of a stretch of waterway, I suppose. So this is basically a bit of a definition. So it's a bathing water is an officially recognised stretch of waterway. It might be a river, beach, or lake. There's also a pond. So Hampstead Heath Pond is also a bathing water. It's a place where it's recognised where people use to swim regularly. And there's some examples here. So we've got some nice beaches, we've got a few estuary locations, a few rivers running through rural and also urban locations. So it's kind of a bathing water can be kind of as basically a location that is well used by people who swim. And it's a bathing water is made by making an application. So it depending if you're based in England, Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland, it depends on the government body, the local government. So for example, in England, it's DEFRA, and the local government that you. Oh, I've got loads of red lines on my screen. Anyone else? No. No. Okay, that's okay. I've got a bit of a
I do
visual.
too, and I don't know where that's from.
I think
Oh,
someone's probably put on their have turned on that function in their on Zoom where you can write on the screen.
oh, okay. I'm going to stop sharing. And there we go. I'll try again.
Again, so you can
There
on
we
the
go. That any that
and do
better?
like notes and docs and
Yeah,
white.
it's back now.
Yeah,
Normal.
Cool.
No red
they're
slashes.
Yeah,
gone.
great stuff. Fantastic.
Right.
So to get bathing status, yeah, you make an application, so a formal application. It's depending if you're in England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. So in England, you apply to DEFRA. If you're based in Wales, you make an application to the Welsh Government. If you're based in Scotland, it's to SEPA, who are the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency. And if you're in Northern Ireland, it's to DERA, who are the Department of Educational, Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. So we'll take you through, not today, the detail of kind of the specifics of the criteria changes in per each region. So that's kind of our support as we go. We'll touch on the difference in criteria depending on where you are in the UK, basically. So we'll come on to that shortly. So the big question is like why we're here today, why we are campaigning for more bathing waters. So why do we need more bathing waters, especially at our inland locations? So currently there are only 15 rivers in the UK that are bathing waters. Ilkley on the River Wharfe was the first river. and there's another 14, one in Wales, the other 14 are in England. There's other lakes. There's a lot of lakes that are designated as bathing waters, but the rivers, there's not many of them. And in terms of comparison to countries like France, there are dozens and dozens of rivers that are designated as bathing waters. So why are they important? For us, they're important at Surfers Against Sewage because we represent water users and we want to ensure people are safe when they're using their water. So bathing waters are the only stretches of river, beach, lake that are monitored regularly for pollutants that are harmful to human health. Okay, so without bathing status, we have no idea what's happening in the waterways unless they are tested by communities who are kind of currently testing through a citizen science program. So citizen science is a way of communities monitoring their water quality. So that's probably the only information that's available at that time. We're getting scribbly again, aren't we? There we go. Oh, stop and start again. There we go. There we go.
Just, Kirsty, you do know everybody who's on here, don't you? Because sometimes I've had people who shouldn't be on here coming in to disrupt by scribbling. It might be someone's mistake, but I'm just checking that you know everyone here.
Yeah, we'll have a scan. Thanks, Becky. Okay, so testing the water quality is also really important as it provides information on where the source of pollution is. So the regulator, so for example, the regulator in England is the Environment Agency, and they test the water quality weekly during the bathing season, and they use that information to then find out the source of pollution. So bathing waters are bound by legislation to protect public health. They hold polluters to account, they drive investment and change, and they also kickstart conversations and action. So if it's a water company, it's a source of pollution. If it's agriculture, road runoff, it kind of encompasses that kind of conversation and that action. And it's that legislative kind of action is important because that's kind of where where Surfers Against Sewage, we really fight hard to enforce the law to ensure that the right regulatory bodies are doing their job and their responsibility. So there's a few kind of caveats to bathing waters. It's not an overnight success. So once you get bathing status, the next day, your water quality is not going to seem to be, make improvements overnight, but it's a mechanism to kickstart the changes to protect public health. And the other kind of caveat is that rivers can take longer to make improvements because there are less rivers. The Environment Agency, for example, the regulator, they're taking longer to potentially kind of find the sources of pollution. It's kind of a new environment for them. So kind of continuing your campaign, like Becky will explain shortly, is important and useful to kickstart that kind of the improvements to those locations with a poor classification. And sadly, a lot of our rivers have a poor classification. Majority of our overflows go into our rivers. So that's kind of one of the reasons for that. So next up, over to you, Lizzie.
Yeah, so we were also going to talk about the role that communities can play and like why communities are beginning to take the lead. And one of the most powerful kind of parts of bathing water status and something that makes it like an amazing mechanism for change is that anyone can apply. So you don't have to be an official role. If you swim in your swim spot and it kind of fits the criteria and you want to protect it, you can apply. And in the face of the kind of minimal data and transparency from regulators on water quality, that's what communities across the UK have been doing. So if we go to the next slide. We can see that we've actually just had 13 bathing water applications. They were submitted in 2025, but just a few weeks ago, these 13 applications have been put forward essentially to the next stage, which is a public consultation, which means that they're really close to getting designation this year. We've actually supported 10 of these applications. It's really exciting. And they've all been led by communities who really love their waterways. So you've got like the River Dee, you've got the River Foy and Lostwithiel, the first spot in the London Thames. There is 2 spots in the Thames already, but the first London one there's a couple in the north as well. And all of these are just people who love swimming. They're all people who jump in regularly. And historically, it was actually local authorities that applied. So if you look at the kind of bathing waters across the UK, which we'll show some maps of in a minute, they've usually been council applications and local authority applications, but you don't have to be. And there's now been a huge movement of people and water lovers who are taking matters into their own hand. So these 13 sites are right on the edge, and we know that people that get to this consultation phase of the application are hopefully likely to get designated. So we're keeping fingers crossed. If we go to the next one as well, please, Kirst. And these are actually some of the sites we've put in. So as you can see there, a lot of them are inland as well, and which is really important because we know that the bathing water designations, so the bathing water sites that are across the UK, majority of them are on the coast. So if you go to the next slide, please, Kirsty. Thank you. So this is actually a map of all the bathing waters across all the devolved nations. So England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland all have their own bathing waters. And as you can see, all of them really are on the coast. It's only a handful inland. And we want more data and transparency on inland bathing waters, and inland sites need to be protected more than they are. I think, we've seen how polluted our rivers are. And this is a mechanism to do that and a mechanism for communities to protect their water. And obviously one of the sites that are inland was the first river that was designated, which is the River Wharfe in Ilkley. And it was obviously Becky and Ilkley Clean River Group that did an incredible campaign. So I'm going to go to Becky. I'm going to ask you first, Becky. You were, the first community that started this movement to gain bathing water status for a river. So what gave you the idea?
Hi all. I mean, it's an absolute travesty that we have to do this, that we have to jump through these hoops to deliver our local government and our environment agencies' responsibility to them. So, in my view, of course, all local authorities know where people paddle, play, and swim at volume because they tend to put ice cream vans there in the summer. So, I would have thought that's a good enough set of criteria for me. Just where are the ice cream vans by a river, and that's where we should designate. But apparently that's not the case, and they'll do absolutely everything to slow it down, make it difficult, and not do it across the whole country. We were looking for I guess a point of pressure because we'd done all the water testing you could possibly do. We were showing the amount of sewage in the river. We were showing the volume and the amount of times our local sewage system was dumping untreated sewage in the river. It was a third of the year at Ilkley. Obviously, that, in our view, is illegal. It was illegal in the view of Windrush against sewage. It's illegal in view of wild fish. Contravenes the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive and is illegal according to the Office for Environment Protection. But despite all that, there was massive amount of filibustering about the fact that it was entirely legal because it was permitted. You'll be watching Dirty Business, I hope, and you'll see tonight's the episode on the Environment Agency, and you'll see why it behaved like that. So we were trying to find some other route in to putting pressure to get a clean up at Ilkley, because no matter how much testing we did, no matter how many people we used in the river, no matter how many people were getting sick, we weren't budging, and we were sort of really surprised. And much like you'll see in the TV programme tonight, you're going to James Bevan's office with the data, delivering it to them, and them saying, "Oh, we must do something." And we say, "Yes, but you don't do anything. The point is you don't do anything." So amazingly, it was a couple of people sort of thought about this idea. One of our local campaigners and our local MP at the time, which was fabulous, said, "Why don't we try a designated bathing water approach?" And since then, of course, the world has somewhat changed in designations and the process of it. But most importantly, if you get a designated bathing water now, you're not allowed to do more, to dump sewage in rivers more than 10 times a year. And we were at 120 times a year. So they had to do something massive in order not to de-designate. So designation's 5 years. We applied. We got it on the basis that our pictures are of thousands of people. It was impossible to walk away from there's been masses, as you know, about how many people, blah, blah, blah. But on a hot sunny day in Ilkley, we'll have 2,000 people here. It's massive. On a quiet day, nobody. But we also knew that when we were getting light drizzle, kids were paddling, playing, and swimming with their fishing nets in water that was clearly full of sewage. And so we wanted the designation for three things. The first thing was so that we could warn the public. So they actually knew, again, if you're watching Dirty Business, you'll know how completely horrific it is when families don't know the sewage around wherever they're putting their feet and bodies in the water. So first thing was that families knew. Moderately successful. I put signs up along the river. Second thing we wanted to do it for was so that we could verify and get, we were doing all the testing. And I said, oh, for goodness sake, the EA should be doing the testing. This is ridiculous. So at least to get the EA regularly on site. We think their testing is moderately rubbish and they don't do it frequently enough. but it means they can't walk away from their responsibility for people who are in the river. So it wasn't because we thought their testing was any good, it was to make them be there. We wanted them to be in Ilkley on a regular basis. So you've got to really be careful when you're thinking about your bathing water strategy. You've got to think, what are you trying to achieve? And the third thing was we wanted to clean up. And so it was I suppose, our last ditch attempt to make it impossible. And the way we get the cleanup is not just because they have to deliver 10, but because the media pressure around these events is phenomenal. Once you decide to go for bathing status, a little, maybe a bit less so than it was back in the day, but you have to make a massive storm and story about it. So we used it as a, oh my goodness, look, all these people picnicking and they don't know the sewage in the river. Look at our testing. And that's why we're going for bathing status. And, so the strategy has to be to make it impossible to walk away from the problem and to deliver the authorities' responsibility to them. And I think I'll tell you a bit more about the process of it. But that's the point, to be really clear what's your purpose, because how you set up, not just the nuts and bolts of the application, I mean, that's just stuff. It's using the application to build the relationships, to create the story and the narrative, to generate the pressure that means that nobody can walk away from the problem. Nobody can say, we can't do anything about this. Is that what you wanted, Kirsty?
Perfect.
Perfect. I think you answered all the questions we were going to ask in one go. So,
No, wait.
This is why I've got Becky on, just a wealth of knowledge. And also, Becky, you didn't mention already this, but we do know that people obviously use waterways across the UK, and the Environment Agency knows this, and we're told how much people use the water across the UK as well. And this is just a map that we put together this year, which just demonstrates these are all water sites across the UK. These are people where people are swimming, where people are paddling, where people have said there might be applications. Most of them are in England because we use a lot of EA data. But these are all potential bathing waters. So the fact that we only have a handful inland when there are still, it's a huge, huge potential to have these sites protected by legislation, to have them as sites where there can be a lot of media attention over the water quality and where you can get data on kind of what you're swimming in. It really goes to show that there should be a lot more inland. And then, Kirsty, I think we're going to go back to you now, aren't we, for kind of what happens next?
And I think, yeah, you're right, Vicky. It's like that kind of having to go through kind of a process, which is, we'll talk you through, is really onerous. But hopefully we'll provide the tools and the lessons learned from Becky and from there's can be maybe a couple of dozen communities since 5 years ago that have gained bathing status, and there's all those tips and kind of advice that we hopefully can share with you to make it as streamlined as possible, the process. But in theory, like, why not make those thousands of bathing waters instantly bathing water status, right? So what happens? Okay, you get bathing status, great stuff. If you're stretch of river, beach, or lake, what happens then? So this is kind of where things kick in. And as Becky mentioned, that kind of the Environment Agency in England, and you got the equivalent in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. They take weekly samples during the bathing season. So the bathing season in England is the 15th of May to 30th of September. In Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's the 1st of June to 15th of September. We know that people use the water outside of that period. We are currently campaigning for a year-round bathing season because we know people surf in January, swim in March, kayak in October. We're not bound to these kind of like 15 or 20 weeks a year. Hence why the classification and the monitoring process is not fit for purpose. It has not grown with how we've developed and we use water since this kind of legislation that's decades years old. So there's two types of bacteria that the regulator monitors for, and they're E. coli and intestinal enterococci, and these are two indicators of sewage pollution, and these are what make us sick as water users, as the public, if we come into contact with these pathogens. So what happens is then during a bathing season, the regulator takes an average of all that data. That data is available online on their website as well on a week by week process. So you can log on to the website, which we'll come on to in a minute, and you can see what if you've got local bathing water and what the results were for that data. It gets given an excellent, good, sufficient, or poor classification at the end of the bathing season. And then that classification then goes on a sign, and these are some examples of different signage. The local authority are responsible for the sign, for installing it. They're part of the process, which we'll come on to in a second. You can see the River Wharf's sign at the bottom. They've got a fantastically bespoke sign, the same with a few others as well. There's a few kind of bog standard ones. The Port Leven one is sort of an A3 piece of paper that's laminated. That's my local spot. You know, there's potential, I think, for from your local signage of communicating lots of different things, I think, as well around water safety and all sorts of information. And as I said, the water quality information is published weekly on the regulator's website. So, is your bathing water suitable for designation? So before we come on to that, we're going to chat to Becky about kind of what happened on the ground after designation. Like, what was the things that you noticed? What changed? What kind of like how the community reacted?
Alrighty, so a couple of things that I think it's really worth you doing. We are, a primarily white community. We're near Bradford. In the hot and summer days when we have our 2,000 people, we become a primarily community of colour. And not all of our community like that. Most of our community, the fabulous people of Ilkley, love it. We love it in terms of our tourism and our diversity, and it's just fabulous. But we have a few NIMBYs. And so they clubbed together and they tried to take us down on a couple of issues because they were very worried that bathing status would attract the wrong sort of people to Ilkley. We might get too many children, for goodness sake, amongst some covert racism. So a couple of things that I think is worth doing. So the first thing is they tried to take us down on, we've got a high flowing river, the Wharf. That it's dangerous that people have died. So many years ago, people did die upstream at Bolton Abbey. There's not only there's the street, but there's some stepping stones. And so they said, you shouldn't be putting anything that says bathing waters because, of course, absolutely everybody interprets it as bathing water where you should go because it's, clean. And of course, that isn't the case. What they used against us is it's a drowning risk. You shouldn't be encouraging people near the wharf or nobody should be going in it, etc., etc. So you should have, if you've got a river or you're near the sea, you should have a strategy in your local town council for safe waterways. There's an anti-drowning strategy, which is on the website. You can find it, a really, really good group about it. And so we said, yes, we absolutely support you. We absolutely need to make sure nobody drowns. I think they were completely caught off guard by that. And we absolutely don't want to encourage people to go in the water in unsafe conditions. So obviously for us, that's high flow. It's not a nice sunny day when they've all got their picnics. Obviously it's fine, apart from the sewage. So we encouraged our town council and our Unitary Bradford Council to develop an anti-drowning strategy for the place. And I think actually that's really worth having anywhere where you've got bathing status. It's a side thing, but it actually it cuts off those sorts of concerns. Then people have got nowhere to go except we don't like it. So the next thing is everyone says this is going to encourage people here. And of course, all our local businesses are going, yes. And some of our town are going, no, it's already really busy. So we found that absolutely nobody knew or understood or knew we'd even got it, really. I mean, the sort of Guardian readers and Telegraph and Times readers did, but most other people didn't know we got it. So actually what we did secondly was once we'd got bathing status, got the designation, and you have to get the signs. I don't know whether you're covering that, Kirsty, about what the signs say. But I mean, the signs say blah, blah, I wouldn't go in there. There's some level of pollution. It didn't say sewage. I think they do now, or certainly ours does now. But it took us 3 years to get a sign that said sewage on it. So the signs we got our signs put all the way along the river rather than just, so we applied for a 1 mile stretch because you can apply for a whole area. They chose the designation to be upstream of the sewage works. Bloody idiots. We've spent years up until fairly recently saying, no, we applied for the stretch, we were awarded the stretch. The stretch is the designation. They test at one point. They chose the test where they said most people were. So keep an eye on that. We ended up doing testing, carrying on our testing downstream. So, a river is a flowing water course the pollution varies according to the CSOs on the stretch. So we kept up testing alongside the EA testing. For a start, averages are a waste of time because what you need to know is the conditions in which it's polluted and which it's not. So we had that from our previous the citizen science testing we'd done in the run up, but we carried on doing some level of monitoring around the flow to complement the Environment Agencies. And we managed to persuade the Environment Agency to put up additional pages for Ilkley, not just the designated page, because on the 1 mile stretch, here's the thing right in the middle. That doesn't tell you anything about downstream. I mean, downstream. It just tells you about upstream. So we got them to do one more test at the bottom of the stretch and to put that up as another website. And then we publish data on our website about the rest. So that the signage stays, the designation gives you one testing point, which is useless for anything that's anything more than, unless it's at the very bottom of the stretch when it might be useful. Certainly for us, because it was above upstream of the sewage works, it was entirely not at all useful because the major pollution was downstream of the testing point. So they'll go and try and find a testing point where they can get the least pollution, and because, whatever, I don't want to clean it up. So you have to watch those games. So the first thing is, heading off some of the NIMBYism. The second thing is making sure that you get a testing regime that suits your designated stretch, because the whole point is to be able to tell people what the water quality is, and the EA will do as minimum as possible. Again, watch Dirty Business tonight and you'll see why that is. So the third thing we did was we then carried on doing the count. So we had to do the count, how many people are using the river, because we wanted to know whether it was really attracting more people for our benefit and for the community's benefit. Sadly, it didn't. It made absolutely no difference at all. Because people come because the weather's nice, for goodness sake, not because you've got bathing status. But at least they come when the weather's nice and have signage. And we did also, for the first year, take leaflets down and talk to people, because what we knew is when it had rained, whilst it's a bathing status river, all you've got is the testing. That's no good with just a sign saying this could have some level of pollution in it. We needed to go down on days when it had rained and say, today, I wouldn't get your kid near it. This river will be full of sewage because all our testing shows it's a high pollution day. And other days when it was lovely and sunny, we didn't bother. So we did do a sort of follow through, both on the numbers of people and the sort of education of the public. On the whole, the public is much better educated now. We're way upstream from where we were sort of 6 or 7 years ago. But at the time we weren't. So that education campaign, educating the town, educating our community, or the local businesses, all of that really, really mattered. So I think those are the things to keep an eye on, part one. And the reason why you need to keep doing the testing beyond the 1 point is because we wanted a clean up. You get a clean up because Ofwat agrees that your river is a higher priority, or lake or whatever. What they use is, of course, the Environment Agency's designation. Ours is poor, but they also use the amount of local community pressure. So when Ofwat is deciding the priorities for any business plan that the water companies submit, and they submit them every 5 years, they have to use a couple of things. And one of them is how much blinking noise there is from the community. So you've got to keep the noise up. It isn't just getting designation and getting to 10 and therefore you get it. Honestly, it isn't as straightforward as that. So you need to be as noisy as possible. And we found people like testing water. I mean, it's something the public can do. They think it's fun. So the citizen science and keeping our citizen science team going for a bit really, really helped with that, so that we could say to Ofwat, we would want this here. Yorkshire Water is putting in this business case. The Environment Agency is going, you'll never get it clean. It's impossible. It would cost too much money. Bullshit. And so we made them, again, you say, keep on delivering. So I found Ofwat sadly to be gone because the water company decided that's the scalp. Of course they have, because they're the one regulator that was beginning to get some teeth and do something, for goodness sake. The EMA is entirely bloody useless. But within the absence of Ofwat, but Ofwat Part 2, new regulator or whatever, I find keeping Ofwat really close to this is important. The EASA is entirely pathetic. Ofwat's different. So if you know who your local Ofwat regional person is, get them to come down and see what you're up to, make friends, give them a cup of tea, go for a walk with them, get them involved in it, ask them, obviously we've got to get to 10 because we're now a bathing status. How long will that take? What will be reasonable? So the difficulty we've got because there's a change in legislation. For us, there was a 5-year cutoff. They had to do it by this March. They had to. And we have got £65 million going, and you'll see it in a minute. They had to get it cleaned up by this March, or else we'd be de-designated. At the moment, sadly, and Kirsty knows how I feel about it, because campaign groups outside of ours lobbied for it to be open. There's now a no end point, and that means that you've got to do everything you can to make that legislation apply, because it can be kicked down the line otherwise. So that would be my advice.
Thanks for that, Becky. And I think so. When you got a poor classification, that education piece obviously was really important for you in terms of the community. Now know what when to avoid going in the river, and all the additional citizen science monitoring you've done using that as a resource. Did it deter people from using the water if you got a poor?
No.
No. Okay.
But it was really, so back to, because people don't really take much notice. So keep your strategy in mind. I mean, we don't want kids going in when it's poor, which is why we follow it up, because they don't read a sign. This is why you have to go down with your leaflets and chat to people, and make friends with them and say, hello, it's lovely you've come to Ilkley. Gosh, is it your first time? Oh, I would just watch your kid. Looks like they're heading towards the river. Wouldn't suggest not today. So some of that friendly stuff. I mean, we quite enjoyed all of that. It was good fun. So I think but the media was really, really, because it's a really great story. Bathing status desiccation, marvelous. Oh my God, it's poor. Yes, it's poor. We need Yorkshire Water, Northumberland, Southeast to clean this up. We need this to happen quickly, because look how many people there are here today. It's an absolute travesty. Where would they go? Our Lido is full. There is nowhere else for them to go. We are the end of the trade line. I can't go any further unless they walk 5 miles upstream, etc., etc. So you need to create the stories, get the media really, really involved with it. And find a way of keeping that in the media. Bathing season's coming up again. We are still poor. Watch out. When is Ofwat and the EA going to deliver our upgrade that we need, etc.
And I think as well, it's like championing these spots at established locations, like community assets, aren't they? The people that, flock to. So even with a poor classification, people, can use the water sensibly with common sense, avoiding, after heavy rainfall. And I think that's that kind of message.
Hey, watch out the language. Not heavy, drizzle in Yorkshire.
Drizzle, yes, exactly. Drizzle,
120
yes.
days
Yeah.
of the year, that's drizzle. So
Yeah.
I think so that's why I think you have to,
Yeah.
keep the campaign and the language and be clear with your public about what's going on. So we're clear that when it hasn't rained for 24 hours, it is entirely safe now for kids to paddle planes. And because we've now got all the grills on, you're not sitting amongst turds. Which they were. So now there is not, human feces, because they're not illegally spilling anymore. They aren't sitting amongst, in dry weather, a sewage pipe running across, dumping and then the trickling across. I mean, horrific. You'll know it. Your own spots will be the same. Really know your outlets, really know what's going on, and really know where you need to put yourselves and how to champion that with the public. But yeah, so it's absolutely fine in decent weather. Fine for them to paddle a plane and swim. Absolutely.
Great. Yeah. It's that takeaway, isn't it? If they're not all sites are doomed in terms of that kind of feeling. It's a bleak picture otherwise, isn't it? And making sure we can still use our waterways to take a swim in. And you mentioned the kind of that risk assessment side as well. And we've worked with a few communities who are all like parish councils, for example, that are landowners, and they're kind of okay, put on with their kind of health and safety hats on, like how do we, what's the liability? And so that's that kind of, we get that question quite a lot, and nothing changes in terms of liability. I think people think there's additional liability once you get a bathing status, but people will swim there with bathing status and without it, and then you're still a landowner with or without bathing status, so nothing changes in terms of like responsibility, apart from the local authority need to put a sign up. And that's kind of, and we've got some sort of templates. The Royal Life Saving Society have done a few risk assessments for communities we work with, so we can like share that kind of thing as well if that's handy. Yeah, handy information. So on to the next slide. Let's quickly share.
So back to kind of the nuts and bolts a little bit now of the actual application. And something that kind of has literally just come up is the fact that these are sites that people already are using, and that is actually part of the criteria for kind of how you can get your site designated. It has to be well used by bathers. So we'll get onto that in a minute. But something that is really important to check is whether your site is already a bathing water. So we put links on here. We won't look at them now, but if you click on these links, and we'll share the slides afterwards, that will take you to the maps of the bathing waters across the UK. Because obviously, if you already have designation, you won't need to get designation. But you can also use that like designation status to do campaigning, and we'll talk about that too, because like Becky said, like once you have designation, you still need to make sure that you're holding polluters to account and doing everything you can, bring it to the media, bring it to your MPs. But if you haven't got designation, you've checked the map, there is some criteria, and we've created like an easy flow chart, which hopefully outlines some of these. So one is that your site has to be well used by bathers. And depending where you are in the UK, the actual specific numbers vary. And we've got a graph or a table we'll talk through in a second. But in England, it has to be over 100 bathers a day in the bathing season. So you do two surveys, user surveys, where you go out for a day for 4 hours and you count the bathers and you take photos and you submit that in your application. If your site is well used by bathers, it also has to be some facilities, so like toilets or parking. So in England, it's 500 toilets within 500 metres, varies for Scotland and Ireland. And also the site should be easily accessible. So, no, like you shouldn't be like jumping off a cliff to get in or anything like that. Nice, easy access to the water and things like that. And it's also important to note as well that we've used the word bathers because only bathers, which are people who are swimming or have intent to swim, are counted. And unfortunately, this is a big hurdle actually for a lot of sites. Is that you might have a canoe club or a kayak club or a site that is used really regularly, but unless people are swimming in it, it isn't suitable for bathing water designation. And we are campaigning against this. We think this is terrible. We think it excludes all kinds of water users. But as the current legislation stands, unfortunately, it is just bathers. So this is kind of like the easy flow chart, and then it does vary across the 12 nations as well. So just to kind of go down to those a bit more. So in England, as part of your application, you'll have to prove that 100 bathers a day in summer use it. So that's May to September. So you choose like the busiest days of the year and you'd go and do a count on those days. Events don't count, unfortunately. It's just like kind of your regular bathing day. And we've worked with communities that have, maybe silently encouraged water use on those days. But yeah, it's about kind of picking your day. You also have to have toilets within 500 metres in England. There can't be any permanent advice against bathing, so there can't be like a big sign that says swimming allowed or anything like that. And we have had people apply who have had a site that has had a no swimming sign, and they've then reached out to their like local authority to try and get the sign removed. So if you do have a sign, it's worth considering, can you get rid of it before you completely write it off? And it also can't be like an artificially created water that is separated from surface water or groundwater. So it can be like a spa or a swimming pool or something like that. So that's England. In Scotland, there's fewer kind of criteria. It's actually only two criteria you have to meet. So one is 150 bathers a day. There is discretion in this as well. So SEPA and Scottish Ministers have put their guidance basically says, you can apply if it's less than 150 and we'll use our discretion. There might be other infrastructure that shows that people use it a lot. There might be events. And you also can include events in your counting. So say, you swim somewhere in Scotland where there's like really big events every year. You could use that as part of your application. And there can't be any permanent advice against bathing. But they're the only two criteria in Scotland. In Wales, it's 100 bathers a day at the coast, but it's a lot smaller inland. So if you're looking to apply on a river or a lake, or a loch in Wales, then it would be 50 bathers a day. And again, no advice against bathing. And then Northern Ireland is a bit more complicated, and the whole process is a little bit more complicated. But generally speaking, it's the same. It's the same around the bathers, and it's the same around the kind of site facilities and evidence of bathing is prohibited. We will share this afterwards because a lot of info.
Nice. So next up, how do you start an application? So you're like, great, I meet that criteria. If you don't meet that criteria, please keep tuned in because we've got some alternatives of how you can keep campaigning for your local bathing water if it's already a bathing water, or if you don't think you're going to get 100 swimmers, or 150 or wherever you are, we'll fill you in some more info on how what you can do for your local waterway. So as Becky's explained, there's kind of steps to the process, and gathering a team is a lot of work to do on your own. So we've seen communities from maybe a group of 2 people to a group of 10, come together and go, right, let's apply. I think we had an example this year actually of a group of we had a few communities that actually just 2 people that made the application between them and sort of delegated the different kind of roles and requirements. So the government require specific things, so we can pop links and things over to you later. So in terms of where you are in the UK, but fundamentally you need to get landowner and local authority support. So finding out who your local landowner is at the actual point where you enter the water, where swimmers enter the waterway, that's the landowner who you need to seek their support, um, and a letter or an email is required, and also the local authority, who's the council that oversees that space as well. So kind of first steps is to find out who the landowner is, and local authority. We've got some kind of maps and links you can use to kind of figure out who owns the land, and then contact the landowner and local authority to start that conversation. I think it's not going to be it won't be a kind of, can I have your support? And they'll reply, yes, no problem. It'll be at the start of a conversation. You'll be like, can we meet? Can we talk about our plans? Where we think there's a real benefit of what bathing water can do for the local area, for our residents, for the community, for the environment, for nature. And so we have templates as well we can share with you that you can sort of send off and start those conversations. You need to evidence the number of people swimming. And that is literally standing on the beach or the riverbank, and counting bathers, counting swimmers. And like we said, sadly, only swimmers are considered at the moment. Some, like in Wales, they do have a column in the application form where you can record other water users like paddleboarders or surfers. So you depending on where you are, it changes. But yeah, you're literally standing on the beach. During the hottest days or on the riverbank counting, and also taking photos to evidence as well, the number of people in the water. Another kind of requirement of the application is, does your local community support your application? And that a consultation is required that you hold for a minimum of 6 weeks. It's a form. Again, we've got a template that you can use of a survey that you can kind of get online. You can do some printed ones. You can hand them out. You can kind of hold events and ask people to. You can direct people to on a Facebook page and that kind of thing to complete the survey and find out that the local community backs your plans for an application. And evidence facilities as well. So kind of the government want to see that there's infrastructure and facilities in place that support people using the water. So is there toilets, a car park? The toilets are the vital, but anything extra is a nice to have. Is there parking? Are there things like, I don't know, first aid or bins or anything like picnic benches or anything that kind of says this is an area used by the community recreationally. So in terms of who your team is, it might be a friend, you might be your next door neighbour, it might be your swim friend that you swim with, or it might be, figuring out who else used the water. Is it like a local paddleboard club or a rowing club? Is it the WI, the Women's Institute, do fantastic work around rivers? You might find there's a WI member that'd like to team up with you. So yeah, we've got some advice of people that you might like to connect with. And this is kind of like a timeline of the process. This is the perfect time. This is the reason why we kicked off this session tonight in February, because it can take a while. The process, you can realistically apply for bathing status. The deadline is in September in Scotland and October in England and Wales. Northern Ireland is like a rolling nomination process, a 5-year process. It's a bit different. So you can absolutely aim to apply this year. So you've got, time. From now, I would, after today, you think, great, I'm going to do this. I would start doing that landowner and local authority piece. And then that will take you, that could take, several months, maybe even up until September to kind of continue those conversations, get an email or a letter that with confirmation they support your application. The bulk of the rest of the work happens in the bathing season. So counting the number of bathers, finding out what facilities are open during the bathing season, and holding your consultation should also happen during that bathing season period. Then what happens is then the application goes in to the government, and then during October to the following February, they'll consider on whether or not it is suitable and it hits the criteria. They may be in contact with you during that time to ask any additional questions. The Environment Agency or the other regulators in the UK may contact you on talking about where they're sampling, the monitoring point of the water quality should be. And that happened this year, so that's kind of positive in terms of speaking to you locally and that your local knowledge on finding out where the best place is to take the water quality samples. There's a new process coming in, a triage process in England and Wales only. So this is a new piece of legislation that we're currently challenging. This is going to be where if a bathing water doesn't get to a sufficient classification, so those excellent, good, sufficient, and poor classifications we talked about, if it doesn't get to sufficient classification over a certain number of years, then it won't be designated at all. So we strongly disagree with this. If people are still going to use the bathing water or the stretch of water, if it's a bathing water or not. So this triage process will involve the Environment Agency taking kind of pre-season samples of your local waterway to figure out if it meets their criteria of reaching a sufficient standard. But don't be put off. We're currently challenging this piece of legislation, and we're still trying to. There's some information on their website of what that looks like, so we will send around the links shortly, so you can kind of figure out what that means for your application. And as we progress with these monthly webinars, we'll update you more with the details of what that means. It's quite technical as well, so we can like split it all down and break it down for what that means for your local waterway. And then before the bathing season starts next year, so May 2027, you'll find out if your local waterway is an official bathing water. So that's kind of like, yeah, it's absolutely doable for you to start your application now to submit in September or October this year. So, Becky, like, what is your advice on starting an application? What do you think are like the first steps? You've talked a little bit about kind of what you did locally.
I mean, you absolutely have to engage all your stakeholders from the word go, because people don't understand it. To be honest, DEFRA doesn't understand it. The point of bathing status is so that people who use the river can be warned about the water quality. It is absolutely not to protect the Environment Agency, the water companies from having to spend any money. So they get a nick and say, there's no such thing as a feasibility study. That's absolute bullshit. So, the point of doing a feasibility study is whether we can improve it. That is not the point of bathing status. Bathing status is literally to provide signage and testing so the public know what they're getting themselves into. It's absolutely disgraceful. So make sure that your community really understands that. And also that, of course, we're going to use it as a lever to clean up, because we're going to create loads of publicity. But, that's good for businesses. It's good for businesses because the water quality may be poor and they'll be worried about it. I mean, you'll see that with, the oyster folk in Whitstable getting really worried about the campaign there because they're worried about business. So what you've got to say is that we already have kids being sick. It's better that we see this as a positive move to make sure the public knows, because on dry days and sunny, it's absolutely fine, but we don't want people getting sick. So, get all your local businesses really matter, actually. Your local authority really matters. MP really matters. Town council really matters, because you need letters of support from all of them. We ran surveys and events and all sorts of stuff. And that was for us, it wasn't just a pain in the neck to get bathing status. It was a fabulous way of getting people engaged with the issue of pollution in our river. So we have 500 members. I mean, it's not huge, is it? But it's better than nothing. 500 members who are now on our email list that turn up at our meetings when we need them to. So, we then have a really big constituency, because most campaign groups are like 5 or 6 people, if you're lucky. And sometimes a gang of 10 people who like doing river testing, and then a whole load of school kids that'll quite happily come and, pull out balsam or whatever it's called, Himalayan balsam. That's our experience. So you want to really broaden your campaign, Grace. This is a really good way of doing it, getting people really educated. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is this absolute ridiculous stuff about the feasibility study. So everybody said to us, the Environment Agency, I would drink the water. You might recognise this tonight if you're watching Dirty Business. I would drink that water. I said, well, we would like to invite you to come down and do that. Now, of course, they couldn't drink the damn water. It's full of E. coli. Absolutely ridiculous. And of course, what they said was it's too expensive to clean up the rivers in this country because the amount of money it would cost, blah, blah, blah. It's impossible. So we were told, of course, because our stretch was included the sewage works, even though EA said upstream, that all the work they'd have to do, all the CSOs upstream, because basically you've got to clean up from the source of the wharf, which is miles away, all the way to Ilkley because it is a flowing watercourse. So they said, you can't do it. It's too big a job. I said, hang on a second. Actually, what we're asking is for Yorkshire Water to maintain its sewage capacity and its sewage works so that it is not dumping sewage except in exceptional circumstances. That is what it is. That's one of its statutory duties. It is supposed to be maintaining it. The fact that we're showing, because of all our testing through bathing status, that it is not doing that is a problem. That is what I pay my bills for. That is what is signed off by the board. And that is what Ofwat has agreed with them. So if they're not doing it, and of course now we know they're not because they've all been in front of the Environment Select Committee saying, oops, sorry, we didn't maintain our sewage systems at all. I said, if they're not doing it, it can't say that it's my fault for wanting bathing status that they can't now put the money in. They should have been putting it in all the last 30 years. So don't land that on me. That's their problem. This is about maintaining the sewage system. This is not a feasibility study about whether we can put in a massive new sewer in order a few people can swim. That's ridiculous. This is about the fact that we have both a climate crisis, but a level of population crisis as well. We have people using this. And if our sewage works is dumping 120 days of the year, that is a hydraulic capacity issue. That is nothing to do with whether we've got bathing status or not. So you use it. So you've got to be really clear that if there is a massive amount of pollution in your bathing stretch, that is because the water company has not maintained its system. That is nothing to do with whether it's feasible or not to make them improve it. They have a duty, a statutory duty, to make sure that they treat sewage, unless there is exceptional circumstances. Now, we have this horrendous water bill coming through. God help us, I never thought I'd be fighting a Labour government on this. And the water bill is about to throw all that legislation in the bin and design something that loosens it up. But whilst it exists, and it will at least exist for your application, the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive is the legislation that matters. Wildfish took this government to judicial review. The Office for Environment Protection and the courts say that we have to comply with that legislation, which means that only in exceptional weather conditions must they dump sewage in the river. So that is their statutory duty. I'm sure Kirsty can help you with that. There's blogs absolutely everywhere about it. So the feasibility study cannot say to you, we cannot clean this up because it would be too expensive. They are legally required to. So just get that really clear. And Kirsty, that is your argument for the feasibility study.
Yeah.
So we were told you can't possibly afford it. Just so you know, we are going for, I'm going to get the select committee to help me because I never get any answers now to my freedom of information requests. But I think the select committee will help me, which is to demand the open book transparency around the costs of cleaning up Ilkley, because we're the first bathing status, we're also the first river to get the investment. So we can find out, they've said it's 65 million plus 15 million spent last year. It can't be. A whole new sewage works in Denmark was 27 million. It cannot cost £100 million to clean up a stretch of river in Ilkley. That is clearly ridiculous for storage tanks, wetlands and reed beds. Are you having a laugh? So we need to find out what it really costs. And if we can, Kirsten, if we do, it will help all of your cases too, because you could say, hang on a second, our stretch is this. What we're looking for is CSOs that have proper grills on them. We're looking for CSOs that only dump in exceptional circumstances. We're looking for the right amount of storage. None of this is about the treatment of the so-called treated sewage. That's a whole other ball game, because obviously they're not doing treated sewage as well. They're all supposed to be putting phosphorus stripping in. There's a legal requirement for it. So the first thing to do is to be challenging using your application. And you can do loads of FOIs on this, which is how much sewage is being dumped in our river? What is the intake flow? What's the permit look like? How's the permit been reviewed? You can do a bit of baseline. What's going on around here? Do we think that our water company has been maintaining our water system as per the legislation, as per the requirements by the Environment Select Committee. And that's a lot to take in, but you can do some pretty basic questioning about that. And I'm sure Peter and Ash, if they've got data, they would help you. But right now, the basics that you can do is get the data. They'll give you, as they did us, masses of, they are duty bound to give it to you. They can't deny it to you. If you want to know what your spill rate is, what your inflow is, what the permit says, they are duty bound to give it to you. You will get data on spreadsheets for writ large. Get some blinking university student to find you the patterns or something. We sat down for days and did it. But have a look, because you need to work out what that looks like. There is supposed to be some level of, I always check because they put on their website how often they're doing raw sewage dumping, and I don't trust it, so I always double check it. So it's worth a look. But for that, I think the question back to the regulators is this compliant with the law? Because what we're asking is that this bathing status site is at first compliant with the law, and at second would then be about reaching the government's requirements for bathing sites, which is 10 times a year, one time in the bathing season. Massive change. So that's what I would really push back on the feasibility.
No, thanks, Becky. And the kind of on that, I think we're getting fobbed off. I think we get fobbed off by the Environment Agency in particular, of their naivety of they don't know how rivers act in terms of like why they take so long to kind
They
of
do.
they do
Oh,
know. They know.
do not fall
No,
for
so
that. They
exactly.
absolutely do. They just will do anything they can to slow down applications, have as few possible applications as, I mean, they're doing it just by this damn application process. They will do everything they can to slow it down. So get good advice, work with anybody else you can, bring your MP on board. Your MP should be asking this with you. Don't do it on your own.
And we'll have some sessions about how to engage your MP in the next couple of months as well. If you've got, they're just a person, so just go and have a chat to them. But if you want some additional information and things, we could help. And we are actually challenging the feasibility study with a judicial review. So we commenced that a few weeks ago, and we'll keep you updated as well. So yeah, we feel incredibly passionate that just because a bathing water is too polluted to protect, too expensive to improve, it is not acceptable that the government's putting our health, water use health, public health at risk. And on the next part, we're going to chat to Becky about kind of the nuts and the bolts of like the what's happened, like what's the real change. You've touched on it, that the real change is getting designation, in terms of like spades and grind, not just concrete, but also some really good nature-based solutions as well. And we'll come on to some questions afterwards as well. So yeah, Becky, do you want to chat us through what's been happening? Or you're on mute, sorry.
First thing we got is this enormous ship pipe. So this, you can see how big it is. That's a sort of a, can't remember how many Olympic swimming pools. It's basically a big storage tank that runs under Ilkley. They had some machine that dug the hole, that enormous hole, right the way through and under Ilkley. So basically, so it diverted the polluting CSOs upstream of the bathing site into this now super sewer. We were having, you may have got it too, manholes popping all the way along rivers because the pipes were leaking and hadn't been maintained and weren't at capacity, etc. So hydraulic capacity is the bit you have to look for in your reports. If you look at EA and Ofwat performance reports, you'll see them say how many times they're either illegally spilling or how many times they are dumping raw sewage in the river, and how often that relates to this hydraulic capacity. That means whether the sewage works is basically working or not, or whether the pipes are maintained or not. That's really helpful. Anyway, that's the first thing, this enormous ship pipes. That was last year. So then we got this. So that was the first time Yorkshire Water funded that. They had to because they were discharging illegally. So that, they didn't have a leg to stand on. That was all the manholes spilling, etc. So then we applied to Ofwat as part of we got Ofwat here, made them walk around and have a look. They set up the accelerator program on the back of their visits to Ilkley, which is a fast track. So rather than do 5 years of investigating, 5 years of thinking what the solution might be, and 5 years of putting the solution in, which is the usual 15-year trajectory, it means that within a couple of years you could go from, oh my God, this is a problem, to the solution being in place. Okay, next one. Thanks very much. So what that looks like, do you want to just Oh, great. So this is our stretch. So if you see where it says the little blue line and the green line, all of that was our applied for stretch. And the little purple star is where they decided to designate. But you can see the Ilkley STW is sewage works is the orange thing. Ofwat agreed with us. We had applied for a stretch. A stretch was so the cleanup had to be all the way to the end of that green line. Well, as you can see, all the way upstream, Addingham, Low Mill Lane, those CSOs were impacting all of us. So the plan had to be for the whole bit, not just for our little bit of Ilkley. Okay, next bit. So you can see all the CSOs. Thanks very much. Thank you. So what do we get? We've got a huge amount of storage tanks. I'll show you those in a minute. Reed beds. This was one of the issues we had problems with the Environment Agency. So what the EA said was they like storage tanks because they know what they do. You put your shit in them, and then eventually they have to go through the whole treatment process. They did not like these nature-based solutions. They were not convinced they worked. I said, what do you mean? Don't you know? I thought you were the Environment Agency. I thought you would know whether putting sewage through a reed bed would work or not. Oh my goodness! And surprisingly, they didn't know. Same with wetlands. It's a nightmare. Anyway, so we've got reed beds going in here at Ilkley, and then further upstream at the very beginning of that slide I showed you earlier on, we've got reed beds going on there. Next one. So that's funded through this Ofwat thing. That's I don't know if you guess the size of that new massive storage tank in Ilkley. So that's pretty much finished. We're due to open that on 31st of March. Okay, that's next one, next bit. And then we're getting this. So we've got in Ilkley along that stretch, we've got 4 storage tanks. One is that enormous one, some smaller ones at some of the other CSOs, and one at Addingham. We've got reed beds up at Addingham and at Ilkley, and then all our treated sewage is going to go through this, which is coming on stream in June. Our local, so we have some problems with this too, because there's lots of it. Oh, if you don't maintain it, it doesn't work. So there's been some issues around constructed wetlands. Our local environment groups love it, because it's going to really support our bird life on our moor, because they keep building on all our wetlands everywhere, and so there's nowhere for the wildlife to go. So we're really keen on this. So as part of this whole thing, and next one please, as part of this whole thing, there's and again, sorry, next one. So we're doing, the next problem we had was about trying to demonstrate the impact of all of this. So we've got our local wildlife groups doing wildlife surveys. What's the impact of the whole thing on wildlife corridors? We're doing some surveys of the town and how the people, what people think about this, whether it's changing the nature of the town. And obviously we're doing all the water quality testing. We have the most tested river in the country now, because we've become the experiment site for microplastics, for PFAS, for you name it. We have universities crawling all over us, partly because we've got a very good professor of diatoms here. So there's a massive amount of water testing. Thanks so much, Kirsty. Massive amount of water testing going on around whether all of this works. And that's a partnership but it's a collaboration between us, Yorkshire Water, the Rivers Trust, who are a little bit tricky, and the Environment Agency and Ofwat. So we will have a evaluation, I hope, that will demonstrate whether all of that has made the difference that it needs, so that our river is free of E. coli and enterococci for people to paddle, play and swim. That is the plan. And that it's adding benefit and value to the town and to the river and to our local wildlife.
Amazing. What an achievement. Yeah, it's just like, it's all goodness. And like, fingers crossed, what next? You think you might get a sufficient? It might go from poor to sufficient?
Yeah, we should go to sufficient. Yeah. So okay. the main issue for us is that because they are allowed to dump sewage at least one day of the year in bathing season, that day you don't want your kids paddling and playing and swimming. So what you get is, back to these ghastly reliance on averages, that what we're expecting is that the water quality will look significantly improved, but not when it is heavy rainfall, exceptional circumstances, or the one time they're allowed to dump it in the river. So that situation means we have to have some level of more, I guess, more nuanced forecasting and signage, because if it says sufficient or good, people will just assume they can get in it no matter what. Well, you still can't if they're putting shit in the river on that day. So we do need some more live forecasting. I can't tell you the bureaucracy of the Environment Agency to work out when it might be that you would not suggest that the water quality was sufficient or good. I said, what about the day that they dump shit in the river? No, no, it's nothing to do with that. It's all about the climate. I'm out with jaws on the damn floor half the time with the EA, honestly. It really is. But no matter what, obviously we can't have a big sign saying water quality is good or sufficient. Off you go, loves, and then somebody gets ill because it was a day when they were dumping shit in the river. So we're working with them on so what now if we get this, which we should do, we won't get it obviously this coming year because it's not all in place. I am awash with idiot journalists. I've just had another one, which is a Greenpeace one, saying, "Do you know you've got a bathing status river and the water quality is poor?" Of course, I bloody know. Oh, what are we doing? So we're going to report it. We're going to show them that your bathing status is poor and it's terrible. No, stop it. That is the point. That's why we've got the upgrade. That's why we've got the changes here. We hope to be a sort of demonstration site for the country and showing you this is what it would take to clean up a river like ours, which is basically the whole of the north of England. It won't help those of you down south. You've got chicken farms and things. We don't have any of that. But for a few sheep and the odd cow and people, this is what it looks like. It would be fine for pretty much every river in the north. So we're hoping we will then have a sort of template in try this. This looks like it works. There's a mixture of nature-based and, climate-inducing concrete. We hope we'll know what it costs. With the help of the select committees, I won't get it otherwise, but if the select committees, they should get it. We hope we can then benchmark it. We hope we can challenge them and say, don't be so ridiculous. Why did you pay the contractors all of that? That's outrageous. No, so it can't possibly cost that. It has to be cheaper in the future. All of that stuff. But we should know what it would take, whether it works, and how much it'll cost for you all to use.
Yeah, brilliant. What a template. And I think as well, like that's been also the challenge, hasn't it, with inland waterways. So we've got our Safer Seas and River Service app, which gives sewage alerts on the coast, but we have not, there's not that capability, we're putting on the pressure. Again, it's such a it's so way behind in terms of inland information. We are unable currently to get kind of what overflows are impacting inland bathing waters to then create a sewage alert on our app. So again, what is the real-time impact of the sewage being discharged? We don't know what the volume is. We don't know how much of it is treated, untreated in terms of so there's all these kind of unknowns that we're developing, at SAS, like what is that real-time technology, the real-time monitoring, weekly sample classifications is not useful in terms of letting us know when to get in the water. We need that real-time information. So that's a massive thing that we're kind of championing, especially for rivers.
I think you can overcomplicate it. I think we're pretty clear. We put on our website, don't go in the river when it's rained.
Yes.
What we hope to be able to say is you can go in the river when it's rained, but not when there has actually been a storm, which is the point, which is that's legal. So that will be the change for us, that you can, even when we've had the usual Yorkshire rain, obviously it rains all the time here, it's still fine to go in the river because the cleanup, we don't have you're still going to have a bit of sheep and cow shit, but it's not enough to tip it from poor from sufficient into poor. That's what we hope.
Yeah, and we need to keep getting in that water, don't we? Because otherwise polluters have won. Okay, last bit. If you need to go, please shoot off and we'll obviously send the recording. But here, Lizzie, over to you. Last little section.
Yes, it's how we can support the application. And so we are really lucky to have worked with, I think it's 29 applications now, across the UK. And this slide, which is supposed to be a video, shows our toolkit, which I don't think is working, but that's fine. We have a dedicated toolkit, which is online, so it's protectingwildwaters.org.uk. So we'll send a link to that afterwards. And that has step-by-step guidance on like every stage of the application. So from talking to your local authority to kind of gathering a team to doing bathing water user counts, things like that. We can provide guidance at every stage through our toolkit, and we've kind of based that on applications like Becky's and others who have kind of gone through the process, and we've learned a lot from them. We can help advise on like selecting a bathing water location. So if you're not sure like where you should be applying, like what the stretch should look like, we can advise on that. We can help you with kind of local authority and landowner engagement. We can help you talk to your MP. We have so many templates, sort of like death by template sometimes, but we can also help you talk to kind of regulators, set up that line of communication. We do also do monthly webinars. So we do webinars a bit like this one every month, and we tend to go through every step of the application in those webinars. And people who come to those as well, like it's really, we have like a really lovely community of people who you can learn from. Like it isn't just Kirsty and I, like there is, like even, Becky here today has shown you what a incredible wealth of knowledge that you collect during this campaigning. And there's bathing waters across the UK that people have been campaigning for. So you can learn from them. We also do record those and we'll share them all afterwards. So you always have them on demand. We can connect you with previous applicants. We can come and do site visits. We can provide example applications. We can connect you to supporting organisations. So not necessarily like, other NGOs or things like that. And we're just always available on demand on our email or our phones. So yeah, Kirsty and I are always around for a chat for the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts. So there's plenty you can do and plenty we can support you with.
Absolutely. And so you might think, oh goodness, like I want to do more for my river, my beach, or but I'm not going to meet 100 bathers, like sadly, but hopefully that's going to change. The government have in England and Wales have announced about a year ago, there's a future piece of kind of they're going to overhaul the legislation to hopefully include all water users. So that's kind of like a big push for us at the minute as well. We're kind of really campaigning that happens. So who knows when that will happen? But it's been announced, but we're going to keep going because it could mean there's many more bathing waters that are applicable that other water users use. So what can you do if you can apply for bathing status? Investigating like sewage data, where your local CSOs are, keeping a monitor, becoming kind of the bit of the a bit of a adopt a CSO, find your local sewage overflow, your combined sewage overflow, and find out how it reacts, when it reacts. Is it after heavy rainfall? Is it after no rainfall? Just getting to know what's going on in your area. And we've got that's linked, and you can find lots of sewage data there. Citizen science, we keep talking about it a lot, and it's so important. If you want to do it, you don't need to monitor your water quality to get bathing status. That's absolutely fine. They're two separate things. You can combine them both, applying and monitoring your waterway, or just do the monitoring bit, and we can help with that as well. There's other organisations out there as well. So Lizzie and I will let you know how you can get involved in that. Speak to your MP, tell them about the problem, tell it why it means so much to you as their constituent and what's happening in their constituency and why they've got a responsibility to bring that matter to Parliament and to take this as a serious issue. We've got a paddle-out protest on the 16th of May. Again, if you want to either run one or attend one, we're going to really great event that we've had like this is probably our fourth year in a row, third or fourth year we've held one, and they're a great opportunity to kind of bring your community together in a water-based or land-based, if you don't fancy getting in the water, to stand up for your waterway. We've got a Facebook page you can link to, and also we've got our Dirty Business petition that went live this week off the back of the Channel 4 drama as well. So we'll share a link to that with you. If your waterway is already a bathing water, you've sort of clicked those links that Lizzie chatted about in a minute ago. You can find it. We got a post designation. So post after you get a bathing water status, we call it post designation, to find out what you can do locally. We put a Freedom of Information request in last year to get all the action plans from the regulator, so the Environment Agency in England. So action plans are created for those bathing waters with a poor classification or that are deemed high priority sites. You can't just find them. You have to ask through a Freedom of Information request. So we're going to put another one in the next few weeks to get the most current ones, but you can still find last year's action plans and find out exactly what the polluter, water company, agriculture is committing, what you can hold them to account for, what the money is being spent as well, like in terms of finances. It's kind of like this tool of like, okay, what is happening in my already designated bathing water, and what can I do to make sure, okay, they said they would deliver some infrastructure changes last year, it hasn't happened. Maybe I'll have that conversation now and raise and shine a light on this. So it's like a kind of accountability tool as well. So what next? We'd love to work with you this year. And if you would like to apply for bathing status, we would love to kind of continue with you on this journey. The next webinar is on the 25th of March. We hold them on the last Wednesday of every month. We'll send a link round. We'll also send a link round kind of about kind of chatting to you about kind of what what you're thinking. Talk to us, arrange a call with us to figure out if if your bathing location is suitable for bathing status. We're more than happy to take a follow-up calls after this as well. And a big one, support the 13 proposed bathing waters. You can respond to the consultation that's linked on that slide and respond. These are mostly community applicants, so they're people who are absolutely in your position, that started off a year ago where you are, and now they're on the brink of becoming a designated bathing water, which is so cool and what an achievement. So yeah, we hope this will be you this time next year. And Liz, Becky, is there anything you'd like to talk about? You're so busy with lots of campaigning locally. Anything you want to talk about?
I'm busy making my parents' tea.
Oh, you're so busy all the time.
Becky, you really do it all, don't you?
Oh my God, sorry.
Unstoppable force.
I know, yeah, my dad gets hungry at this time of night. So other things. So for those of you, I say that if you're getting more politically involved, anybody in Thames, I think I put a notice up there. Peter Hammond's just published his data today, showing by constituency, if you've got a marginal MP, particularly, they're going to start getting worried. Some of you will know that we run the People's Commission for Water. We're calling for public ownership. We are absolutely convinced the private equity, private model is the one that is absolutely stuffing us. Hopefully you'll see that if you've seen the docudrama, you'll agree with us. So I think the most important thing is get to know who your MP is, whether they're marginal or not, what they understand about water. If anybody wants briefings for their MPs, they want questions they want to give their MPs, or if they want rebuttals to the government's absolutely disgusting persistent peddling of lies and misinformation. If you want the rebuttal sheet, we've also got that. So yeah, Kirsty will let you know how you can get hold of us, and get hold of me, and you can find us you can certainly find me on the Sewage Campaign Network or Ilkley Clean River Group. We're happy to share materials as we develop them, and you're welcome to be on our mailing list. Thanks ever so much.
Thanks so much, Becky. Thank you for your time. And we're at, thank you. Have a good,
Sorry, you need to
nice
go.
to see you. Thank you so much, Becky. It's all right, bye. There's a question about kind of it feels quite a daunting process, and I think we're really conscious of like how do we kind of break it all down to make it like feel okay, this is something that that feels like achievable, and we promise it is. Like we'll do our best to break it down in bite-sized chunks as we go month by month, and sort of drip feed information as and when you need it, and bringing in kind of a community of like you're bringing in your team members, whether it be you, another person, 2 of you, or 5 of you, or 10 of you. I know it feels like a lot of information.
Yeah, and every campaign is very different. So obviously, Kirsten and I have supported, 29 communities now, and some communities like Ilkley River Ilkley do everything and are like obviously incredible campaigners, and some want just data on their waterway, and bathing water status is a mechanism to get that. So I think there is like there is a real spectrum of kind of different bathing water campaigns. So it doesn't have to feel as daunting, I think.
Definitely. We're absolutely here for you. I think we worked with a few communities that submitted their application in, and we were kind of on, we were available a couple of hours before the deadline, 10 o'clock at night, helping people get over the line. So we're here for you in terms of like, feeling supportive if it does feel like a lot and you want to go for it. So yeah, you can depend on us. We're really at time, but I would like to offer the floor to anyone who's got any questions, or feel free to email us afterwards, or say goodbye even if you want to head off and have some tea as well. Chani. Hello. Hi, Shani.
Hello,
Hi.
just want to put, and thank you so much for putting Paddle out in. So my name's Shani, I work with Kirsty and Lizzie, but I'm also I reach work on the Isle of Wight. And I am helping run the paddle outs this year. So if you want to do a paddle out as part of your bathing water to get to know your local community, to network people at a singular point of a National Day of Action, please sign up, even if it's to support another one in existence. And I'll link you up with any other local people who come through to start growing your network.
Thank you so much. Anyone got anything else they'd like to talk about? Hi, Richard. Hi.
Kirsty, Lizzie.
Nice to see you.
Hi, Richard.
I was going to ask you about Yorkshire Water. I don't know if it applies all over the country, and the Ofwat Innovation Fund and UNIF AI, because on the 2 sites where we had proposed to apply for bathing water, also on the site on the Swale where Richmond have applied, and also on Ilkley, they've now put in these SONs, these monitors, which are monitoring the water quality, I believe, every 15 minutes for the next 2 years. And once a day, a man comes along and takes a specimen for culture. I just wondered what you knew about it, because they say SAS is involved. Is that correct?
We're not involved. No, we're not involved. But we're aware that happens. So we're kind of aware there's this thing called Section 82, which is kind of a requirement that water companies by 2030 monitor the quality of water at overflows using equipment like SONs, which is basically like a sensor. For those who don't know, and it monitors things like ammonia, pH, turbidity, conductivity. So I know there's things like the Environment Agency at Bathing Waters specifically have installed SONs like to collect data every 15 minutes. There's 3 bathing waters in the Shropshire area that the Environment Agency have done that. So I haven't seen any consistent approach in that happening. So maybe it's like local.
Well, I got in touch with the Rivers team at Yorkshire Water, who denied any knowledge of it.
Oh, interesting.
I then got in touch with the EEA, who said, not us. And then I got in touch with the company who put it in, and they said it was the bathing water team, Yorkshire Water.
Have you spoken to the Rivers Trust? Because I know
The Rivers, it's interesting, there was
River
a bit
Trust.
in the local paper that said it was, I think, Ofwat Innovation, UNIF AI, the Rivers Trust, and SAS were involved.
Oh, that's weird. I think I've seen that the Rivers Trust were linked to it, because there was the project was given quite a lot, like nearly 2 million in funding, wasn't it? This just got off my head.
1.9.
Well, 1.9. Okay, there we go. But I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't us. I just didn't know if you'd spoken to the Rivers Trust about it and if they'd confirmed their involvement.
I just found it fascinating that they'd put these things in, not only at places that have got status, like Ilkley, those that have applied, but they also knew the 2 sites that we were thinking about,
Interesting.
which is Aysgarth
weird.
and down at Massam.
Yeah, and are they publishing the data available publicly?
I think I copied you in to the email where I said, can they share the data, or do I have to put an FOI in? I've not heard back yet.
I think I saw that actually. Yeah, let us know when you hear back, 'cause that'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
No one else has heard anything like that.
We've had a similar groups, that have had similar, a few kind of isolated, cases that's happening. So it's encouraging, isn't it? That the more data, the better, right? I think that's the lack of consistency is confusing as well, isn't it?
The thing that shocked me was that one part of Yorkshire Water denied all knowledge when it was another part.
Another team of it. Yeah, that's okay. Let's keep it updated, Richard, definitely.
I will.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Anyway, hiya, Nicole, you're right. It's so like, where is the unmute button, isn't it? Like
Mute.
there you are.
It's slightly off topic, but I'm being really cheeky and getting a little bit of a thing in. We've got a fab design activism workshop tomorrow, so I'm just going to send a link to that. If anybody knows anyone in the London or Surrey area, especially younger people who might like to come, please share it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nicole.
You know,
Anyone- yes.
slightly shameless
No,
plug,
please
but
plug away.
We're all
We love
fighting the
it.
same fight.
Yeah, definitely.
we're quite excited because it's kind of a big event for the London Reps team, kind of kicking off
Oh, well done.
lots of stuff.
That's brilliant, especially
That's
next
brilliant.
generation
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
campaigners. Brilliant, love it. Anyone else
So-
got any questions or plugs or anything they'd like to share? If not, we can wrap up and we'll put together, package all this information together, and just dig in, have a read, ask us questions. You know where we are.
Cool. Well,
Okay.
might be everything.
Well, lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for your time and sorry for going over. It's a bit of a habit of Lizzie and I to not stick to time. We must get better this year.
We will this
promise we
year.
will. With
If
this
you
show,
come to
we
the other
will.
webinars, it'll be an hour max.
We promise. Thank you so much, everyone. Nice to see
Thanks
you
so much
all.
for coming.
Speak soon.
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.